All right, I think I'm gonna get things started as people trickle in to the Zoom. I'm really excited to kick this panel off and hear from our exceptional moderator and panelists, and just learn about this really dynamic and innovative startup ecosystem. In the small group chat we were having before, I mentioned, how since I've started learning about different startup ecosystems in the Middle East and North Africa, the Tunisian one has always stood out to me just as really being kind of at the forefront of thinking about how the government should interact with the private sector and spur innovation, how teams can be built and distributed across continents and across geographies. So I'm really excited to dive into this. I'm going to just speed through some quick opening remarks and introduce our panel and moderator, and then we'll turn it over and start learning from them. Really quickly, I just wanted to introduce myself and Viaka. So my name is Hani Azam. I'm the founder of Viaka, something I've been working on for the past 2 years or so. Today, we're a growing network of nearly 800 founders, investors, and operators across the world who share ties to the Middle East and North Africa. We bring this community together via in-person mixers, dinners, and other events, as well as virtually over Slack, WhatsApp, and we're always sending just one-on-one introduction emails. I'm sure people in the audience have been on the receiving end of those. This year, we've already hosted in-person events in Cairo, Paris, New York, Boston, Riyadh, Dubai, and Toronto, I believe. I may have missed somewhere, but I know that next week we're hosting our next in-person event in Chicago. This is our first event in Chicago. So if anyone in the audience is based there or knows people there, please invite them. We'll share a link to that event in the chat shortly. We also host virtual sessions like this one, as well as regular demo days, where we are able to showcase the amazing talent that we have in our network, whether they're investors, founders, ecosystem enablers, or just operators in tech. We also actually just published something earlier today for members of our network, which is a list of 300 VCs in the MENA region and in the region's diaspora in the US. So that's something that our members now have access to, and just a little additional incentive for folks in the audience to join the network, become a member. We'll share the link for you to sign up if you're not already part of the network. As well as, like I said, the link to our event in Chicago. If you're interested, you like what you're hearing about Viaka and interested in following along, we're pretty easy to find on LinkedIn, Twitter. We also publish a newsletter on Substack, which is just a great way to stay up to date with these different events, both virtually and in person. I'm going to move on to introducing our panel in a second, but before I do, I want to just thank particularly the rest of the Viaka team, Lace and Malak. They're my colleagues who just have played a huge part in putting this entire panel together and promoting it. So thanks to them both immensely. Moving on to introduce our panel, I'm going to start with Manar. Manar, Labidi is co-founder and financial manager of Cynoia. She's honed her expertise in investment and strategic management within Tunisia's entrepreneurial ecosystem. She's passionate about making startups investment ready. And Cynoia itself is a Franco-Tunisian collaboration software dedicated to teams and businesses.
Thank you so much, Hani. Thank you for the introduction, for having us.
My pleasure, Manar. Looking forward to hearing from you. Next up is Salma Baghdadi. She is an award-winning ecosystem architect that builds bridges across borders to empower startups in emerging markets. With over 15 years of experience, she ignites innovation through Ujenzi advisory, advising governments and DFIs. She's also the innovation lead at Wave Global, which is fostering the blue tech startup ecosystem at a global level. Salma Salma spearheaded Tunisia's Startup Act, fueling the growth of over 1,000 startups. And as I mentioned, Ujenzi Advisory itself specializes in supporting governments, development finance institutions, and international cooperation agencies in their efforts to build conducive tech ecosystems in emerging markets. So we're really lucky to have Salma with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Salma. Next up, we have Faten Aissi. Faten is the Associate Director of Flat Six Labs, which is one of MENA's leading seed and early stage venture capital firms. She's been a driving force in empowering entrepreneurs across emerging markets and across the Middle East and North Africa in particular, and all of Africa, sub-Saharan as well. She's led numerous startup programs in collaboration with partners across these ecosystems, and generally just did an amazing job fostering environments for entrepreneurial and startup success. As I mentioned, Flat Six Labs is one of the leading seed and early stage venture capital firms in the Middle East and Africa, backing over 100 companies each year in those geographies. So thank you, Faten, for joining us.
Thank you, Hani, for the invitation. Glad to be here.
And next up is Amin bin Abderrahman. Amin is the founder and CEO of Konnect Networks. He's an accomplished engineer with over 13 years of experience in corporate finance and fintech across Africa and Europe. And he founded Konnect to address financial exclusion in North Africa by providing innovative digital payment solutions. And even just before this call, we were chatting about kind of how Konnect is really emblematic of growth and success from Tunisia itself. So really excited in hearing Amin share more about his story as well.
Thank you, Hani.
Thank you, Amin. And then last but not least, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Hossam Shafick. He is an Egypt-based principal at Silicon Badia, started his career in investment banking, covering pharmaceuticals and food and beverage, closing deals well over $1 billion in value. As a lot of you might know, Silicon Badia itself is a venture capital firm that invests in technology startups globally, including backing Expensya, one of the Tunisian ecosystem's largest success stories. So with that, Hossam, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen and feel free to take us away.
Thank you, Annie, very much. I've always been impressed and inspired by the work you do with the Viaka network, you and the team. So thank you for inviting me on this one. I am personally very proud and excited to be moderating this panel today, I think, because Tunisia has always been very close to my heart. And I remember, as an Egyptian and African investor, I remember first time I visited Tunisia, I knew I was going to be impressed with something, right? But I knew a lot about the scenery and the good food and the good people I'd meet. What was surprising to me is I did not expect the level of education and tech talent that I got to see as a first timer visiting the ecosystem. I remember first time I spoke to a bunch of founders in a VC event, I realized that unlike the countries I come from and invest in, namely Egypt and wider Africa, the Tunisian industry diversification is really moving towards SaaS, AI, gaming, and deep tech, right? So looking at this and comparing it to Egypt, for example, or even the big countries in Africa, you'll find that the majority of funding and startups are going towards fintech, simple logistics solutions, simple e-commerce. And the reason there, I think, is one, Tunisia has a very advanced education level and talent level, which we'll touch on. Two, Tunisia is building globally. It's building for global solutions. Unlike other companies that may have big enough markets that think they can only build locally or regionally and exit and make a good return. from there. So that was very interesting for me and exciting for me. Another thing that was super exciting is that every time I spoke with someone, they either had a master's in AI or a PhD, okay? And that was a few years back, right? So just thinking out loud, someone knew about AI 10 years ago to do a PhD in it was just, mind-blowing to me. And I'm still very curious to understand from my Tunisian fellow panelists on how and why is Tunisia such an advanced tech powerhouse, but yet one that is still underspoken of in terms of tech talent. I think other things that were shocking to me very quickly, one is I think the language. You guys don't speak Arabic, and that's an objective opinion. It's not subjective. I tried speaking the language. I couldn't understand anything. But more importantly, I think the language mixes very well with the culture, right? And the culture is heavily moving towards female empowerment. And even if you take the panel we're looking at today as a sample, 3 out of the 4 Tunisian panelists are females. And that's heavily unlikely, right? When we do panels back home in Egypt, we try to find females that would basically come to the panel so that we can mix out the diversity. Not just that, they embed the female empowerment into the language. So I don't know if everyone here has visited Tunisia or spoken with Tunisians in Arabic, but basically, whether you're a man or a woman or anything that falls in between, they're gonna call you she, her, okay, inti, regardless of how you identify. So I think one piece of advice to give first-time visitors to Tunis is don't take things very seriously and don't get offended by this. It's just the female empowerment they have, and it's part of the culture. So on that note, I don't want to take too much of this time, and I want to move on to my fellow panelists with questions. So first question may be for Amin, and this is a rhetorical, open-ended question, and it's open to all other panelists if you want to join in. But what is Tunisia for you? What does it represent to you, the Tunisian ecosystem? And why do you think it should be a tech powerhouse to the world?
Thank you for what you said. It's very funny what you said about Tunisia. What is Tunisia for me? It's my birthplace, first of all. I was born here, and I have received almost all my education in this country. This is where my parents live. My father, because my mother is a globetrotter, but like my father lives here, and the rest of my big family live here. So for me, it was obvious after 12 years studying and traveling and working in Europe and in other countries in Africa. For me, it was an obvious choice to try to build something and consciously give back. The initial idea wasn't to give back. The initial idea was to come back to a place that I missed, that have amazing food and fresh vegetables, fresh fruits and everything. And also to try out a few things. What we say often about Tunisia is it's a testing area. Like the country is very small. It's very easy to reach people. Let's say if I want to get in touch with the director of a bank, I will always find someone who knows the director himself. Like it's 2 layers maximum. Like often it's 1 layer intermediary between both of us. So it's very easy to try out few things and very easy to try the market. And as you said, the new generations and even the old generations are very much aware about what's happening in the world, and they're very eager to discover new things. So it's a perfect place to test the market and see how it feels. So that's why I came back here.
That is a brilliant answer. And why do you think Tunisia should be a tech powerhouse to the world? And what's missing to basically drive it as a PR and advertising to, everyone to come and invest in the tech talent?
We don't have gas or petrol. We don't have natural resources. So our primary resource is the gray matter. And that has been identified a long time ago by Bourguiba, the president who gave the independence to Tunisia. He knew that actually we had only one long-term resource that we can invest in, that is the gray matter and education. So it has been inherited from all generations that education has to be the thing that we focus on. And like when I subscribed to my engineering school, I had the interview with the director of the engineering school, and the first question he asked me as soon as I stepped in his office was, why all Tunisians have good notes in mathematics? And I just told him it's very easy, because our parents from the young age always ask us, how much did you get in math? They don't ask about other French or Arabic or other literature.
Yeah, they definitely don't ask about Arabic. Okay, let's
Yeah,
let's
okay.
move on. Yeah.
It's
That's
always
definitely
about that. So I believe it's a heritage, and yeah, that's our this is our only real long-term resource that we can invest in.
That is a very interesting approach. I never really thought about this, but I'm still very curious, to move on and build to that question. Maybe Salma, since you were the very first, one of the very first real venture builders in the region, and specifically in Tunisia, I saw you firsthand, and I experienced you building the venture world within Tunisia with different institutions that you joined. So maybe on that note, why would you invest in Tunisia today as a local, regional, global investor? It doesn't have to be VC.
Mhm. Actually, I think Amin says it all by his own experience and through his own perspective. So I would second that. So first of all, as a startup founder or as an investor or as a venture studio, for example, to choose a starting point, Tunisia seems to have some good infrastructure to build on that. So I would start, of course, with tech-savvy talent pool. We have thousands of engineers that graduate each year. And the last figure that I have is 3,000 are leaving the country to join foreign companies in Germany, in France, in the US, and others. So there is plenty of engineers that are looking for the right opportunity to be on board, like to onboard into an exciting tech venture that will fulfill his career, like professional expectations. So there is a real pipeline to dig into it and to onboard in a new innovative solution and inspiring and exciting ventures. So this is a first. I would say the second is the cost effectiveness in Tunisia regarding the infrastructure, like good infrastructure. It's ready to have good startups from the technological infrastructure, the legal infrastructure. There is some things there ready. Of course, there are more challenges that we need to tackle. It's not perfect, but it is okay. It is very fine to start building startups at very early stage. Like imagine if you have a great, big campus somewhere in an imaginary world, like you have plenty of engineers. It's not very expensive. You have universities over there. You have R&D research center. It's easy to access and easy to live, easy to invite people in. This is Tunisia, actually. It's a human-sized kind of labs, a big R&D lab that is open air and it's very welcoming to any entrepreneurs and innovator. So I would say this is very important for very early stage venture and investors and or business angels that would love to invest into very early stage startups. I have also many other intangible, let's say, benefits to invest in Tunisia, but that create a lot of synergies. As also it was mentioned by Amin regarding the levels of connection. So Tunisia is not that big. Obviously, nothing to be compared to Egypt of course, but even to many other countries in Africa, and it is well connected. And also there is an open, and this is, I'm saying that comparing what I observed in other countries on other ecosystem, there is a true spirit of collaboration, maybe because it is small, maybe because it is facing many challenges, facing lack of resources, like financial resources. So we need to reunite, we need to work together at different points and different stages. So it led, like, it created a new culture of collaboration. So you would find many institutions in Tunisia, organization working all along together to support startups, to build, to create new programs, to design new programs, to also welcome other partners from abroad. And I think this is something really nice and very welcoming for any entrepreneurs from around the world, or investors as well. So I would say, just to summarize it, and this is seen as, I can share with you also examples as such, Expensya or Instadeep or many others. I would say, like, Tunisia has the good ingredients to build that first powerhouse, like a R&D kind of laboratory, which is very good to have your engineers. They work, they experiment, they iterate, they have their first POC or MVP. They would go to the market, they try, they experiment, they get back to the R&D center to build up on that and to sophisticate the product without investing a lot. So not making this experimentation very costly and expensive from a CapEx or OpEx perspective. So I think this is the thing with Tunisia. It's a very good cost-effective powerhouse.
One other thing, Salma, maybe you forgot mentioning, is there was at some point like a real political will to push the ecosystem to be built at some point. Even though we still have to defend it because it's not win forever, like it's constant work. But there was at some point a real political will, encouragement for the ecosystem, and by setting up certain advantages for startups that we are that we're receiving benefits from.
Yeah, of course. Actually, I mentioned it, but very briefly. Maybe it's worth to stop on that and to share some of the major steps and the legal infrastructure. So the Tunisia was pioneering in passing a law on the it is the Startup Act, encouraging startups, so innovative SMEs with a very high growth path, expected growth path. So it is there. It's a reality in Tunisia. The law was passed in 2018. It started the implementation in 2019, and then we have now 1,000 startups that benefit actually at a direct outcome from tax exemption and many other incentives, social incentives, connection, facilitation, etc. But at a larger, wider outcome, it is to build the ecosystem. So we have now a definition of a startup, and just to mention it, or to make it like to raise that point, the legal framework is open to any startup that is incorporated in Tunisia. So nationality wise of the founder himself is not important. You can access to all the benefit even if you're Egyptian, Nigerian, Moroccan. So you're very welcome to Tunisia to benefit from this legal framework. And so around this definition of startup, many other programs have been built to support the startup. So supporting the startup support organization, accelerators, incubators, supporting programs, supporting connection opportunities, participation to international event, but also channeling funding or investment opportunities to startup because they are known. We have a database, we know how it works, we know where they are, and we know how to support them and when to support them the best. So this is truly, it's a huge step forward. Of course, it's still not perfect because it has to evolve with the startups' needs, with the ecosystem maturity. But as an infrastructure, as a legal infrastructure, it's a big move forward, and it's really open to to all startups, all innovative companies aged less 8 that would be incorporated in Tunisia.
If I may add,
Yes, sure.
just a little point
Yes,
to
please,
that.
please, go ahead.
Honestly, the points mentioned by Salma and Amin, they covered almost everything, really. I want to add a very common thought, which we studied at school. They always tell us that Tunisia has a strategic location. Well, we used to memorize that for exams, but now we can really understand what's behind that. Basically, Tunisia is like the bridge between the two continents. It is a very strategic Euro-Mediterranean point where it bridges the flow, economical flow, even entrepreneurial flow between Europe and Africa. So it is very for potential and the diversity in this country. It's like the whole ecosystem is like a conversion point for an immersion scope where a lot of people, potential people, meet, but with the one dream of success. So even the mentality of the Tunisian here, and we used to joke a lot about that. We say, if you make it here in Tunisia, you can make it elsewhere, because we have a really resilient, honestly, we have a really resilient mentality. We want to succeed. We want to make it. So yes, I think this is a very solid ground for even the political ground that is being established, and the whole context, cultural context of a Tunisian founder or a Tunisian entrepreneur and investor.
I absolutely agree to everything all three of you said, and I've actually always been inspired and impressed on how quickly but sustainably the ecosystem has been moving by every single participant within the ecosystem. So if you look at the founders, even the ones that have exited are coming back to Tunisia, giving their mentorships, giving their lessons learned, giving back their time and recycling some of the money they've made, which is super impressive. And you don't see it, everywhere in the world. You also see government acceleration or catalyzation rather than intervention or competition. And you see a lot from every single participant within, venture founders and venture capitalists and early stage accelerators. They really are working together in order, like you mentioned, to build the ecosystem within Tunisia that can eventually service a global play. So maybe on that note, moving further into maybe a third question, Faten, I know you've been doing this for a long time now with Flat 6 Labs and more. How have you seen this ecosystem change or evolve over the years?
Very good question. I mean, it's such a journey since I think that there is a before and an after Startup Act. So for Flat 6 Labs, we've been operating in the ecosystem since 2017. So before the Startup Act. And we can see the impact of that. First, on the number of startups who have been created after the initiation of the Startup Act. The second thing is the maturity of the entrepreneurs, because I think that's something that Salma didn't mention is, other than the Startup Act, there has been a lot of initiatives from the government and especially from Smart Capital in highlighting the know-how of Tunisian entrepreneurs worldwide. So there has been so many delegations of Tunisian entrepreneurs participating on international fairs or international events, either in Europe, in the US, in Africa, and the Middle East. And that brought a lot of maturity in terms of knowledge of the markets, but also maturity in terms of what the entrepreneur needs. We have seen that since also the fact that these entrepreneurs have been aware about the opportunities elsewhere than in Europe. I think that was something that changed through the years. When we started operating, when we were asking the entrepreneurs to draw like a roadmap of where they see themselves in 3 or 4 years, practically all the entrepreneurs would say that they want to scale to Europe. And then we saw that through the years, Europe was not that attractive as we thought it is. And then they turned into the MENA region, but also they turned into Africa. I think that also the Startup Act has been some kind of safety net for entrepreneurs in terms of, so one of the benefits that entrepreneurs can have access to if they have the label of a startup is having a kind of scholarship for a year where they can work solely on their startups. If it works, then they can resign from their jobs. And then if it doesn't work, they can go back to their jobs. And that was kind of a, as I mentioned, a safety net where entrepreneurs were solely focusing on creating innovation and not thinking about side jobs to be able to provide to their families, simply as that. Something else that we have noticed is that I think that the exit of Instadeep was also a turning point in the maturity of the ecosystem.
Expensya, please.
And Expensya. And Expensya, yes. Yes, absolutely. It really turned the attention into this little dot in North Africa, this little country in North Africa that is creating people who create this kind of innovation and being able to have this kind also of exits. So that, and as you mentioned, Hossam, that is something that also showed us the involvement and the engagement of the Tunisian entrepreneurs and the Tunisian diaspora towards their ecosystem and towards their country. But I think that overall, for us, at least as investors, the impact that I can think of and the impact that I can talk about is really the Startup Act. It has been a turning point. It has been a life-changing legal framework for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely agree. And I love the fact that, I love two facts. One, that you mentioned Expensya, and two, that you mentioned impact. I think impact is something that is very important, that we talk a lot about, but never really measure realistically and double down on and tap on and understand the impact of the actual impact, right? So speaking from my, share as an investor in Expensya, we as Silicon Badia has seen the level of impact that trickled down to the Tunisian local, regional, then potentially more African ecosystem. We've seen it become very profound post the Expensya exit. On one hand, founders, employees, and ex-employees have made money, right? And that's what happens within exits, but it happens within exits at venture. So unlike maybe private equities or family businesses, the level of ESOP or ownership from team members is very limited compared to companies that are really engined or built by a second layer of team. So on the Expensya side, I know for a fact that 100+ employees have made money from this, have managed to monetize from their ESOP. 60% of them were females, right? And we always talk about social impact, but we never really touch on the end goal of it, or the end element of it within the venture. The key idea with venture is you want to scale the company and align the impact that will, tap on the exit from a monetary perspective and also a non-monetary perspective. And I think something that was very unique that we saw in Tunisia is that the money didn't stop there. So, like you mentioned, the ex-founders or founders of Instadeep and Expensya are doubling down their money and their exit value towards other ventures in Tunisia, and they're giving in time and money and capital and introductions to other startup founders within Tunisia and within the growing Africa. And we're also seeing other employees that are starting to become angel investors, right? They saw the game, they made money from it. Why not build my own thing? Why not back other companies? And it wasn't just monetary in my perspective, because we also started seeing a recycling of talent, right? So we saw a lot of, an employee that used to work in Instadeep or Expensya managed to build their own thing or work for another venture, whether it's local or regional, and let alone the level of magnitude that the current employees within Tunisia they will find the level of knowledge transfer from the diversity of merging with something like Medius, that is a global player, very profound. So once these guys are out of Expensya, Medius, and are either building their own thing or rebuilding something within the ecosystem, it will definitely materialize into a very significant flywheel effect, and it's going to keep on, revolving. So amazing news on touching on the case studies, and it's just incredibly interesting how, like you all mentioned, a relatively small country like Tunisia has managed to create two big success stories, like Expensya and Instadeep, and I'm sure there's a lot more to come. But maybe since we've spoken a lot about the bright side of the Tunisian ecosystem, let's touch a bit on the challenges and the obstacles that are witnessed specifically from a founder's perspective. So maybe Manar, if you want to touch on this, tell us what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing today? And
yes, absolutely. So basically, we all agree that Tunisia has a very favorable ground as an emerging market in terms of entrepreneurship and investment and all of that. We all agree on the good ingredients, like Salma said, that are existing, but now they need cooking. What we need now in Tunisia in this very critical phase, and I mean critical, I call critical every phase of growth where the stopping time when the growth could be exponential. So now in Tunisia, we need more consistency and continuity of these good points. We made a great framework, but we need also to make it continuous and consistent with what's happening. We saw a proliferation in incubators, accelerators, follow-up programs, all of that, early stage funding and all of that. But now all this multitude of startups is growing, right? Is becoming heading to the notorious series A, B, C, and etc. So we need to see this continuity in the support, in this encouragement that's happening in the ecosystem to keep up with this growth of the life cycle of startups. From the perspective of a founder talking and representing a Tunisian startup like Cynoia, we also see the essential need to encourage collaboration between all the players of the landscape. We need more to come closer together. For example, in our case, we are leveraging partnerships with many entities, whether educational programs, large companies, small companies, programs for startups, with the government, because now what we need to unlock the potential of Tunisia is more linkage between those players of the landscape. The government has to understand how significant is the apport of startups and entrepreneurs in the economy of Tunisia today. If you had checked the news, and certainly you had, the value of the entrepreneurship ecosystem has doubled between 2021 and 2023. So we are creating a lot, and we are contributing a lot to this, to the economy of our country. So we need more collaboration and more knowledge sharing. That to mention, from the perspective of a finance person enthusiastic about investment and all, I should shed the light upon some restrictions in the financial framework, legal framework. A lot of startups now are trying to bridge the gap to digitalize the processes, the legal processes and formalities of creating startups and all. We are heading in that way, and I am very happy to see a lot of startups doing that, trying to find solutions on how to mobilize more flexibility. And that's to become more attractive to external investors and all of that. So seeing this is very, very, very promising for a country of such a crazy potential. So just to say all of that, we need more continuity. We need more consistency of the vision that we all having, whether economical vision, whether legal vision. We need more proximity inside one ecosystem. We need to work in together. We need to spread forth the opportunities to other regions of the country. So we not to centralize it in one or two cities, because the human resources, like Amin mentioned in the very beginning, we have amazing human resources here in Tunisia that we should really leverage, and we should put it on the right rails to get Tunisia the real potential it deserves.
I mean, I feel like you want to say something. Go for it.
Yes, I would like to continue what Manar was saying, actually, in the continuity of what she was saying. Like everything that has been done so far was for seed stage companies, like very early stage companies, right? But since the market is very small, we have no other choice than opening to the region and work with other countries, either Europe or neighbor countries or African sub-Saharan countries. We have no other choice, right? So we have to continue this work by building the infrastructure that will allow companies, Tunisian companies, to spread and work with other countries without having to move out. In our process, for example, we had no other choice than opening two companies, one in Europe and the other one in the US, for this fundraise. Why? Because actually the legal framework and the financial framework as well that exists here are both very complicated for international VCs, which is a shame, because Tunisia could be the place where all the VCs can land to work for the region. As Manar said earlier, the strategic location is a benefit. We need to take advantage of it, and we need to build the highways for the funds to come here and feel safe, not feel that they are trapped in a system where their money can be lost or anything. And from Tunisia, we can actually expand and keep the work that has been done.
Absolutely. Salma, Faten, any input from an investor, accelerator, builder, SSO perspective?
I think that I actually join what Amin just said. Just even from the perspective of an investor, it's very difficult to convince an investor to invest in Tunisian startups who are incorporated in Tunisia. Nevertheless, we had many other VCs who invested in Tunisian startups incorporated in Tunisia, but it's within blurred lines. I mean, they know that it's a risky investment. They don't have a visibility in regards of if they are going to get their money back or not when the startup makes an exit. So I think that in that terms, the legal framework regarding the let's say the financial ecosystem needs to be rethought and redone. We are still operating with laws from the 70s and we are in 2024, and we need to upgrade and update all of that. The second thing that I would like to mention also is in regards of Tunisia branding. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Expensya and Instadeep has put Tunisia on the map, but I think that but I think that it has to be like a governmental agenda to talk about the potential of Tunisia. I would take, for example, the example of Rwanda. Like the Rwandan president, every single time that he goes anywhere, he talks about Rwanda being an innovation hub and being welcoming for investors and entrepreneurs and anyone who would like to support the innovative ecosystem. And with all due respect to all the Rwandan entrepreneurs and the Rwandan peers operating in the innovative ecosystem, I mean, I think that Tunisia, we have a lot of potential, and we are pretty advanced. And this is, again, thanks to the Startup Act, but we are not doing all the work that has to be done in terms of branding the country and branding the potential of the Tunisian entrepreneurs. So for me, these are the two things that we need to really work on as a country in order to attract more investors, but also to rebrand Tunisia as an innovation hub and not as a talent hub.
Regional one. A regional innovation hub. And it's happening, I believe. The central bank is working on some texts like to make it a little bit easier.
Well, I hope that it will be implemented very soon.
Yes, we're fighting for it. I really don't like having
Exactly.
3 entities
Looking
just
for
for
it.
the fundraise. I need only one. And if it's needed, we can open another entity for business, not to fundraise. It doesn't make any sense, like opening an entity to receive the money. The money could be received here and spent from here. This is what I believe in.
I mean, and that's not good for us as investors either. I mean, as Amin mentioned earlier, we are one of the investors who supported most of the entrepreneurs or successful entrepreneurs that you hear about here in Tunisia, and we invest in Tunisian dinars. And when someone like Amin opens a subsidiary or opens another company outside of Tunisia to raise funds, it's not good for us because we will not be able to follow him. We will not be able to invest or to follow on in that company. And so, yeah, this is a missed opportunity for us. So I hope that this will be changing.
And it's very complicated for entrepreneurs as well, because like it's not possible to open a company in another country if you don't leave over there. So you have to physically leave the country and spend 6 months, 6 months a year in the other country in order to receive the money and hold assets outside of the country. So it's very complicated for us as well. And I believe it's gonna change, and I hope it will change. So I keep faith.
Yes, it should actually change. It should, because it is like the wheel for the success of startups here in Tunisia. Because if you want me as a startup in Tunisia to really excel, to reach my exit, to see another Expensya, another Instadeep as well, I need like encouraging elements for my revenue sharing, for attracting my investment. I need to see my electronic transactions and the monetization of my products like a SaaS, and you see what SaaS are actually living here. I want to see that more accessible information for me as in my market, more accessible. So that it is very essential and crucial for success. So if you want me to succeed, you should make those things flexible, at least for my business model to be recurring. At least it needs to be flexible. A lot of things that one bit by bit, step by step, we're improving. Even the solutions themselves, like yourself, Amin, you are in the financial sector. In Konnect, us in Cynoia, we are revolutionizing the whole digital collaboration. Solutions like ourselves could be a response to that. We are actually solving the challenges of this ecosystem. So if we are really encouraged by all the players of the ecosystem, we could be the answer for that at best.
Brilliant. You guys are very charged in a good way. I like the energy. And I'm betting on Tunisia. We've bet on Tunisia before. Not going to say the name. Faten, you already know if you want to guess. It's Expensya. And hopefully we're going to keep on tapping into this amazing ecosystem, whether through funding or through anything else that we can help with, because this specific ecosystem needs to be, like you mentioned, branded and advertised globally as a tech hub and as a place where you can double down on investments and create exits and create big companies as big, if not bigger, than both Instadeep and Expensya. On that note, I think we have questions from the audience. I'm just conscious of time. We can start taking comments or questions. We have a stalker from my team, Silicon Badia. His name is Tariq Shilifa. Tariq, if you want to unmute and just tell us your thoughts or question, feel free to go ahead.
excuse me, I take ownership of that. He's one of my ex-teammates.
There you go. Listen, Tarek is everyone's ex-teammate, right? He's doing everything at once. There you go. There's the man.
Hey guys, thanks again for the great talk. Always nice, and thanks Viaka for making this possible. Yeah, the quick question. So I'm currently based in GCC right now, and working with startups and companies here. Most of the companies that or startups that are based here are either building their products, if they're lucky, fortunate enough to have local tech talent, or they're building out of India or China. And sometimes the salaries for tech talent, the junior, is actually quite high, even higher than in Europe, and gets you thinking, right? As a North African speaking the same language and coming from the same region, why aren't there more, North Africans, Tunisians, Moroccans actually building tech companies, or actually just servicing tech here? Or by that nature, even Sub-Saharan Africa. So that was my question, basically, thinking about Tunisia and talent.
Amazing question as always. Who wants to take this, guys?
Hossam, just one thought in the interest of time. Could we wrap? I think there's a second question as well about whether geography and geographical location is really that important these days when discussing software products. And so, yeah, I would suggest, why don't we just put both of those out there right now and let folks respond. Yeah, just to save time.
Yeah, go ahead.
To answer to Tarek's question, like Tarek, very, very easy, like example of why is it complicated to have more talent from Tunisia rather than from India. It's very simple. It's the banking ecosystem. Can you imagine a freelance getting hard currency in their bank account? What would that represent for them? It would be very difficult for them to justify that. And I think that that is part of the complication of the banking ecosystem, the banking system in Tunisia. The second thing, I think, why there are not a lot of talent in the GCC, I think that it's also cultural. We're closer to North Africa, to Europe, rather than to the GCC countries. I'm seeing that now it is starting to change for quite some time now. Like for 2-3 past years, we are seeing more and more tech talent, but also entrepreneurs going to the GCC, but it's still new. We don't know the ecosystem. We don't know the market yet. Again, culturally speaking, we're a little bit different. Even the language, as Hossam mentioned earlier, it's very, very different. Yani, when you have someone from Egypt talking to someone from Bahrain or from Saudi Arabia, they can understand each other. I know that English also is a language that they can all align on, but I think that the approach of being Arabs among each other is a little bit complicated when you don't talk the same language and you don't understand each other. So for me, why you don't see a lot of talent in the GCC and how we can promote that, or how we can encourage that, I think that getting closer to more ecosystem players in the market, to understand the market, to understand how they function, to understand the culture. And the second thing from our side, at least in Tunisia, is, and especially if you are a freelance, it's very difficult for you, either at GCC or anywhere else, to be able to work with companies abroad.
So maybe I'll jump for that question as well as answered Aisha to Tarek. Actually, in my last experience as ecosystem director for Smart Capital, when we worked on a report, the annual report, so this is one of the figures or KPIs that we kept following up to see how the entrepreneurs from Tunisia evolve in accessing markets. So of course, the first year, like mainly almost like 90% of market target was Europe. And in Europe, it was 80% or something like that in France specifically. So we were addressing one big market and specifically France. And we can explain that later. But we had 3 reports. For the 2 other reports that followed that first, we saw like a progress or a growth in expanding or in targeting other markets. And we saw that Tunisian entrepreneurs, I'm not talking about the talents. Talents are actually approached by companies. So maybe it's part of the branding. We have a problem with branding. So GCC companies and corporations are not putting Tunisian talents in the radar. So we will achieve that by the branding. But from the entrepreneurs, the African and MENA market have seen a positive curve going up through the years. So we see that we are building innovation that are more fit to the African and the MENA markets, because first of all, we were trying to reach European markets and we're not sure about the competition there and we don't know how to get there, etc. But then we shifted our attention, building more fit companies to emerging markets. So that was first. And second, maybe due to more and more programs, and that are like private, mainly there are private programs that are sourcing or connecting or attracting local entrepreneurs from different countries. So our local entrepreneurs are building their network through that region to actually compensate this lack of cultural proximity, of like closeness, or the problem of the language. And I hope, Tariq, you're not saying inti to everyone in Bahrain.
I'm sure Tariq is doing that.
So now we need, so this is only a positive perspective on that question. Like it is real that we are more addressing the European market, but it is changing. But to accelerate that change, it requires more initiatives that are led at macro level, at political level, like cross-pollination program from different countries in the MENA region, ecosystem tours, soft landing programs. This kind of program would help actually build their own like networks for the entrepreneurs, discover the ecosystem, getting a sense of the market expectation and needs, and then they are able to build the right product for that, for those markets. And so to get back to that, actually why Tunisian entrepreneurs are targeting the market, the French market, because they have the network there. They studied there, they worked there, they have family there. So it's easier to get your first clients when you have that network.
It's also a mature ecosystem, right? It's an ecosystem that has exits, so it makes sense, right? Where you speak the same language, you can, travel easily, you have your network, and you can get funded easier. Yeah, makes absolute sense.
I would like to answer to the question that has been asked about SaaS product, like since it is digital, why are we caring so much about the geographical location? I disagree with that. I think, like, of course, like pure SaaS, maybe it can succeed, but most of the companies, they reach a point in their growth where they have to meet their customers and they have to sit with them. They have to have a sales process, etc. So it's important to be located where your target is. I'm not talking about Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. But even these, at some point, I believe, for corporate partnerships or corporate customers, you need to meet your customers in person in order to sign and to grow. And also location is important. Why are we talking about the location? Because the question was specifically has been asked about Tunisia and the recipe that made the success for the few companies that you have heard about, and our also testimonial about the ecosystem. So that's why we were talking about Tunisia.
I want to add on that question too, because I love the question, to be honest. It's a very good question. When we talk about geography, it's not just a spot in the map. Geography means culture. Geography means relations. Geography means geopolitical relations. Okay, we are talking about SaaS as well, on the other hand. But when you are doing business, it's not just about the digital product that you're selling. Because at the end of the day, you need to strike up connections. You need to be physical presence. The geography has outstanding and predominant role that it plays in the go-to-market, in how you position yourselves. Each geography has its own players. Each geography has its own competitors. Culture as well. When you grow and you upgrade your product, you will be expanding and going to other countries. It's easier for you to start with locations that much more your thesis, that much more your potential, that much more your product. And sometimes when changing the location and the geography, you have to adapt in terms of language, study the consumer behavior there, have market introductions in that geography. So it's easier to tap on a network you are familiar with rather than just tapping on another network. You have no one there to introduce you. And warm introductions play a huge role in terms of investment, in terms of clients, partnerships. So again, geography is not just about geography. It's about the relations, the flow, the culture, the geopolitical, all of that contribute in shaping your business and shaping your strategy, market strategy, penetration, in even your product. When you are like doing a website for your SaaS, what languages are you doing? What languages are you putting in that website? If you're going to the MENA, you have to include Arabic. If you're going to West Africa, like we are doing right now in Cynoia, we have to do it in French. If you're going to like the other East African, other part, you have to do it in English. So you can see the dynamic and even the relationship that you have to strike with those players of the market. They value a lot human relations. Okay, digital products can like fill that gap. Okay, we can chat on Zoom, or we can chat on Meet, whatever, we can send each other's messages, but at the end of the day, a deal while you're having a cup of coffee together or a drink together can work better than just a message through LinkedIn. So yes, geography is more just a spot in the map.
If I can add on that very, very quickly, from the standing point of an investor, either you have a software or a hardware company, as investors, the very first thing that we look into is that startup has raised funds from a local investor or not. It's more reassuring for investors to know that the local investors have trust in that startup before investing in them. So this is to go back to either you are a software, you are a hardware company, you are working on the Tunisian market only or from Tunisia and other markets. Your location is very important for investors to know if there are local investors who invested in you or not.
Absolutely. Any other final thoughts or comments? Maybe I can give a final thought or comment on this. There is, as you guys mentioned, there is a trust element that needs to be there. And unfortunately, geographically, Egypt, Tunisia, and countries in Africa don't really have that trust element within SaaS yet. So when you go B2B to the US and a customer finds you based in one of, a country they don't know much of, there could be an unfortunate, back of the head thought of a business risk or a privacy risk or a security risk that is super important in SaaS. Who disagrees, but I think this wraps up our discussion. Thank you all so much. I have enjoyed this the most, I think, to the max. I think I could have done this over at least 7 days. I didn't really get the chance to speak about how Tunisia is close to heart and how Expensya is an amazing success story that has both monetary impact and non-monetary impact. But it's a thought we can have another day. I'll hand it over to Hani to wrap up and give final thoughts. And thank you all for attending, and thank you, panelists, for being so valuable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hossam. Thank you to all of our panelists. We've dropped links in the chat to join the network, as well as the panelists' LinkedIn profiles. This event has been recorded, so we'll also publish that and share it with everyone who registered. It'll be available on YouTube as well. So just a huge thank you to you all for sharing your insights and your experience. I learned a ton. I'm sure that everyone else in the audience did as well.
Thank you, Hani. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.